Bok Svima, or hi everyone, and welcome to Grow Make Cook. This is a bit of a somber week for me. Thank you for everybody who has reached out and offered their condolences for my mum. Her funeral was yesterday and I'm really lucky that we were able to do everything online so that I could still be there even while I'm in Croatia and very far away.
Bok, I'm Mandio. This is Grow, Make, Cook, and welcome to my garden. I grew up in Australia in a permaculture family, but after we got married, Mr. O and I moved here to his home country of Croatia. I am a passionate and hands-on homemaker and gardener, and I love life's simple pleasures. So join me on my journey, and together we can learn to grow, make, and cook. This is the first week in November, or Studeni.
This does look like an awful shame. These are my dahlias and it's just a spectacular, bright, beautiful flower. And I'm cutting it back because I need to dig these guys up. I need to store them. So last year I tried mounding heaps of mulch and compost on top of my dahlias and protecting them, and they all died. And so this year I planted out some new dahlias because I love them and I think they are ultimately a flower that's really worth growing. They're just beautiful, but they're also too tender to survive here. We've tested it, I've lost heaps. They need digging up.
And now that I've cut the flowers off, what I have is a mass of material that I'm going to try and take cuttings from. My cuttings don't always strike, so I don't want you all to think that I'm some sort of magical guru that gets 1,000 plants every time I do this. But I do believe in giving it a go, because even if I get 2 or 3 new plants, that's 2 or 3 new plants I've gotten for free. So I've just cut all of the ends of all of this and chopping off all the lower leaves, the same as I do for basically every cutting. And then, try chopping it off a little bit more neatly with the sharp side. These secateurs are quite sharp, but I suppose I'd be better with a knife. I think a knife might do a cleaner job, but this is what I've got, so this is what I'm using. And then I'm going to take a small plastic pot, fill it with some lovely sifted compost. It's not too lumpy. Give it a quick tap just to get it down, and then I'm going to just pop these around the edge like so, and then I'm going to chop them off about where I think it ought to be. So ideally you want a little bit of leaf node and a bit of growth, but I don't want too much leaf. The other thing that I am trying with these is just starting them in a glass of water. I figure these were all going to go into the compost anyway, so giving them a go just by popping them into a glass of water to try and start some roots seems like a good way to use up something that otherwise just would have been compost. Now, I take quite a lot of cuttings. I think that it's a lovely thing to do, and it really has very little cost. And that's one of the things I have learned about gardening. It's just to give things a go. Don't be afraid or intimidated by trying something new, like take a cutting from a dahlia or plant a new type of seed you've never planted before. You have so much to gain and so little to lose with these little tasks that are basically free. And I think that a lot of people are quite intimidated by these tasks. A lot of people think that it's outside of their scope or outside of their knowledge, when really, having a go means that at least sometimes you'll succeed. So dahlias are kept as a tuber, a bit like potatoes, but longer. And so very gently is how you want to tease these guys out of the ground. That's why I'm using a fork rather than a spade, and going very gently and lifting quite a large chunk of soil so that we can gently prise out. There's one just there, those tubers, and that's what we're looking to try and store. Is this the very core of the dahlia plant? Now this is a young dahlia. It was only bought this year, and so you can see that the tubers are quite small, but they'll keep and they'll store. And this guy now hopefully will last over winter. So the first step when you're lifting your dahlias is to try and tease off very gently as much of the soil as you can, so that all of this lovely tubers are free. And then I'm going to actually give them a rinse off, which is a bit funny because we want these guys to get dry, but I want to remove as much of this material as I can. So let's go and give these a rinse. Giving your tubers a good rinse like this allows you to really clearly see what's going on and inspect this plant for its health. So these tubers are all nice and firm and solid and good. They look nice and neat. There's no signs of gall or rot or anything. That's a really lovely, healthy little plant. So it should store nicely. And now that we've removed most of the soil from around it, I think we're ready to get in and do the next steps. And now what I'm doing is I'm just putting my dahlia into a crate, something that will keep this sawdust all together, and I'm going to store it over winter in a cool but frost-free place. I'm thinking it'll go into our drvanica or wood store. Now the purpose of using sawdust, or you could use shredded newspaper or old spent compost, anything that's dry but is just going to protect those tubers over winter. So what I really don't want is these guys to get wet. And so the paper and the crate with the air holes and the newspaper underneath and the sawdust, these are all just measures to try and protect this plant and force it to go dormant while the weather is cold and frosty. This here is a most unexpected job in this lovely warm patch of autumn weather that we've been having, and it's a lovely one. What has happened is a whole lot of tomatoes have sprung up for me out of my compost, and if I leave them in the ground they will die. So as a backup plan to all the cuttings that I've taken, I am digging up and planting out very tender guest plants, things that were not necessarily intended, but they're very welcome. This is one of the lovely things about gardening organically and without using a whole lot of pesticides and fertilizers, is sometimes
your garden just gives you gifts. But on that lovely gift of a notion, I think that's probably about all we've got time for today. So if you like what we're doing, please like the video. If you want notifications, use the bell icon below. And if you're new to the channel, please subscribe. And until next time then, do widzenia.